that and looks at it, you'll note that that's because the coccyx is part of the sacrum, which is a very interesting bone. It is basically one, but it looks to be fused, prehensile tail, all of that business. Very much like the sartorial sutures on your skull fuse as you grow older. It allows your brain to grow and so on, and until you get to a certain age, your skull could be considered to be soft. That's also true of the sacrum as you grow. And at some point it starts all fusing together, and there's also all kinds of associated diseases from stuff not working correctly. But let's just look at it from the viewpoint of you've just fallen on it, and it hurts like bloody hell. Well, one of the reasons that it hurts is because there is indeed the coccygeal spinal ganglia down there at the very end, which is the lowest nub of nerves you've really got in your spine. And these nerves are really rather spectacular because they come out in huge bundles through these holes in the sacrum, which is triangular shaped, by the way, tetrahedral more than anything. And always curved, and these things, the lower ganglia there, the coccygeal spinal ganglion, is just a little south of all of those nerves that come from the genital area that then join into the spine and rush on up in the spinal column to give you all kinds of interesting information from your fiddly bits. So that's a very sensitive area. But in addition to that, the most basic chakra is the one at the base of the spine. So everybody on the planet, the most dullified sheeple on the planet, all the way up to the most enlightened individual that's ever lived, will have the Muladhara chakra spinning, because that's the one that basically is keeps the engine turning over, so to speak. It has fewer petals than any of the others. The petal effect that is created from the dimpling is created by how the energy comes in from the immaterium part of reality into the material part of reality, and this twisting iridescent effect that occurs. In any event, boy, this gets really complicated. Okay, so that's true of all of the chakras, that they all have this iridescent mother of pearl look when you see them, when you actually can view the things. And if you go and you do Aikido and you work your butt off and you're reasonably young, like when I was in my 40s, and I'd go to these big Aikido teach-ins, so to speak, that would go for 3 and 4 days. And everybody'd get the ki flowing really good. And there would be times when, indeed, I'd be able to virtually see the chakras of other individuals, and they were always iridescent this way. It's an eerie effect. It's much greater than seeing the auras. It was only occasional. It'd be interesting to see if I could do it now. It's been a number of years, decades, but because I'm an old fart. But the effect of looking at them is intriguing indeed, and they're always iridescent. They all have their own different color scheme. There's also a video that I saw once. I haven't been able to relocate it. I saw it on YouTube or Vimeo, and it was of the great Ganges festival in India a number of years back. I think it's this one coming up in February. It was so it would have been like maybe 97, 98, something like that, maybe in the early 2000s. A guy with a video camera was walking through the festival at night. There were perhaps 10 or 20,000 people in the same square mile he was in that were all hugely lit up with their ki, but within that group, there were 2 or 3 really enlightened individuals whose chakras were glowing, because we were looking at basically masters of being human who really were well enlightened and knew what the hell was going on. And his video camera picked this up. The interesting part of this, of course, is that this is one of those things like the UFOs, where the guy who was videoing it at the time didn't see it. And it was only later when he had it actually got it up and posted it on YouTube, and he came back and looked at his own video, that he was amazed, because when he was just looking at it with his eyes, he did not see these people as the camera saw them, and the camera saw them basically as this interconnected group of 7 chakras, and there were, I think, 3 or 4 of them this way. The chakras were all glowing, and you couldn't see the human around them. It was really cool. fascinating. I watched that for a bit, and then, of course, this was, like I say, probably, I saw it maybe year 2003 or something, and time progressed, and I lost track of it. If anybody ever runs across it, it'd be interesting seeing the link again. In any event, so the very base chakra connects down in there near the coccygeal spinal ganglia, And then a little ways up, we have the next set of chakras. Now, these are interesting. I should note that as you go up in the chakras, 1 through 7, the number of petals increases, the complexity increases, the color changes, the nature of what they do for the body changes, and in an observational viewpoint, if you look at individuals, you can literally see basically how enlightened they are by this little gauge. If they're all fired up and all of the chakras are spinning, well, there you go. And so it's 1 through 7, and you could even get a range or a rate if you wanted. Everybody's got 1, so that's your basic line. I don't know if a zombie would have a base sacrum chakra or not, but here's the thing. It is quite true that if you wanted to look at us without the body as these floating chakra all intertwined and so forth, one thing you would notice is that there's an energy connection coming up out of the planet that supports that structure. And so our base, Muladhara chakra, down at the sacrum, is pointed downward at a slight angle, and it is receptive to that would be yin energy, we're yang beings, so it would be earth yin energy from a Taoist viewpoint, and that energy, then that basically is us acting as a conduit for solar energy through the other chakras to connect with that kind of energy there from the earth, the yin energy, to connect with the yang energy from the other chakras that provide the tension or contention that allows, again, for this energy to transmit from the immaterial into the material and thus give us movement, life, etc. So it's basically at that level, it can be seen as opposing fields of magnetism, which of course is a metaphor for the electric universe and all of this anyway. We're no different than anything else, and if you look at us all the way through, your heart beats from the electrical ions, from the hydrogen and the calcium, etc. You have all of these various different electrical processes in your brain, all of which are done fundamentally from an electrical viewpoint with alternating current, opposing current. You don't really have a DC current going on. Otherwise, your heart would run continuously and have to be spherical or circular in some fashion. We have an alternating current, and so we have a beat, pause kind of a thing. And this is basically how all of reality works. Of course, its beat pause is at 22 trillion times a second, and we're merely reflecting that at our much lower rate of expression of this in our much grosser form, which all this is really cool. A number of years back, I got to this situation where I thought I had vertigo, ended up getting jabbed with needles at hospitals and having my veins scarred by saline because they thought I had low blood sugar or some damn thing. But none of which was pertinent, because I was actually had stumbled into a key state, if you will, in which I was able to see my own chakras spinning when I closed my eyes. Very disconcerting. Let me tell you, this destroys your life for about 5 days until you get to this point where you reconcile that this is just always going to occur. Since that point, I've been able to really get into the chakras, and I'm as far as the throat chakra, which is an interesting thing itself because it is angled. Really cool. The other chakras, are the one at the sacrum is angled down, and when you perceive it, it turns very slowly. And as you work your way up from the spleen to the solar plexus, up to the heart, to the throat, in the various different chakras at those points, you just get used to this, or I did anyway. I got used to this particular level of orientation and was rather surprised to find that the throat chakra is at an angle, rather steep one. And so it's very interesting. It's right near the pharyngeal plexus. It's in front of that. That's where the roots of that chakra come on in and join the spinal column. I think they all join near or within the ganglia itself. And perhaps the ganglia, which are these rather amorphous kind of massy things in any event, are basically just like a little electrical sparkly in which the chakra dumps its energy into the physical body, because we are so closely associated. We have the pulmonary plexus and the cardiac plexus right across into the spinal column, just as we've got the sympathetic trunk entering in that same area, and the diaphragm is underneath that with the spleen, And right in that area, we've got the heart chakra, and then slightly below that is this major one, which is the spleen chakra. And that's really important, it turns out. I thought it actually, initially, that it just went straight up the spine. It does not. So you have your first chakra, which is at the lower level, pointed slightly at a downward angle of about 26 degrees. Curious again. That is the one that picks up the yin energy from the planet. And then the next one up is not the solar plexus, but it's in fact the spleen. And then you go back down to the solar plexus, which now makes sense because both of those lines of, I can't think of them at the moment, the meridians, the nadi, go around the neural mass of the stomach area at that point, and that's what allows the transfer of energy there into that neural mass, the same way that the top two chakras allow the transfer of energy through the brain material. And the faster your chakras are spinning, the more opportunity is available to your brain because you've got more energy up there. You'll note that people that we think of as dullards or reduced energy in that regard, intellectually, physically, or whatever, all of these people are at some level having a low chakra state. Now, can it be addressed? Can these be changed? Are people born this way? I don't know. It's beyond my understanding at this point to have any kind of a general case that I could extrapolate from the specifics I'm forced to deal with going through these experiences myself and doing the research. So it may be the case that a lot of the chakra interaction that produces a less than effective interaction with reality, and so less energy, those may be, well, I know that pollution and all this sort of thing affects them at specific levels at a grosser dynamic level within the material world, but there may be even greater effects from the electrosmog and all of that kind of stuff. If that's the case, then we'll know soon enough with the global coastal event and the upcoming heave-ho of 2013, 14, and 15, a lot of the electrosmog and the electrical infrastructure that causes it will go away. And so we'll have an entirely different environment to deal with. A lot of this may come out at that point to those individuals that go through it well. Excuse me. So we have the base chakra. We have the next one up, which is the spleen chakra. That is at a very dynamic part of the body. The diaphragm is an assistant to the heart. It's also the, if you will, the controller for the, or controllee of the second brain, which is your, around your intestinal mass, and that's where your ego lives. And you'll know this, for instance, when you get a sudden shock, what happens when your diaphragm and that whole area down there is in a contracted, tense state. And it's because that brain down there has reacted. This is where fear comes from, is from that section of your body. And at that point, it affects your breathing. So one way to get out of a fear state, by the way, is to, because of the diaphragm is really cool. The diaphragm can be controlled both from the mind and from the gut. And so the gut, which is your parasympathetic control system, what you can think of as your master control or autopilot, can be overridden by your brain. So if you find yourself in a fear state, one thing you can always do is breathe it out. And give yourself, if you need to, cleansing breath, which is to just force the air out from as deep as you can, seizing control of the diaphragm again, and then go in for long breaths and lower your breathing down into your abdomen. That forces if you will, it forces your ego and the fear out of the picture, and your brain has taken control. It's a common martial arts technique. You learn it way early, and it forces fear out, and at the same time allows you to energize your body through the increased oxygen, because that's one of the effects of fear. You know, the shock and everything. Duh. It's reduced oxygen that starts the whole process off, that starts the panic attacks and so on, because what happens? The diaphragm contracts. You get this contention and contraction around the fear points within the gut, and that leads to this state of reduced oxygen, clouds the brain, affects the whole body, etc., etc. So one way out of that is to learn to breathe through it. It's more difficult for some people than others. maybe if you face a lot of fear, you learn it real quick or you die. So in either case, I don't have to worry so much about it in this event. So we go up to the spleen chakra, which, as I say, is near this really dynamic area, the diaphragm and all of that kind of stuff, and then we pop back